Citizen review boards are, in my opinion, critical. We found broadly that most organizations, whether it's the bar associations or Congress, can't police themselves. When the citizens don't trust the people who are there to protect them, and when they are considered the enemy, you have a problem. My father was a police director. It was an elected position, rotated in a small community. And police officers, law enforcement officers need to have the respect and the cooperation of those for whom they are sworn to protect. And without that, you have a problem. Most of the law enforcement people that I know welcome this type of oversight because it's become a good old boys network, so to speak. You found out in the, whether there's a code of silence, or you see that in almost every profession. In medical profession, doctors don't want to, police their own. There's always a bad apple, whatever it's law enforcement or whether it's doctors, lawyers, or Congress. So that's why it's important to have these review boards that have the support of the populace, the citizenry, cities that welcome this, and they have been very effective in weeding out bad protocols, bad procedures, bad officers, and also weeding out bad complaints. So it works both ways. If the administration supports this, if the police union supports it, it will make for a better department, it will be better law enforcement, but the citizen has to believe that they can get a fair hearing, a due process hearing, and that their concerns are being met. Memphis used to have a citizens review board. In fact, had designated seats. One of those seats was for the ACLU. And for years they met, but they had really no effective power. And then it was just disbanded. And it was moribund for a number of years until it was resurrected. It was under the administration of A.C. Wharton. And I remember Herman Morris, who was the city attorney at that time, called me and asked me if I would serve on this newly reconstructed, reconstituted board. I kind of laughed and I said, "You sure you want me on that board?" He said, "No, it's precisely because of what you do that we want you on that board." And so I talked to him about potential conflicts because I have sued every mayor and every director of police since about 1970 something, maybe 71. And he said, if it ever comes up that you have a conflict, I know you'll raise it and you'll recuse yourself. In most of my cases against the police or the administration do not implicate in any way the work of the Internal Affairs Committee. And so I sat on the board. And then I was reappointed when administration changed. And then I was recently asked to resign because of two pending cases that I have against the administration. One involving the blacklist, I'm sure we will get to talk about that a little later, and one against the city and the Elvis Presley enterprises for what took place on a peaceful protest on the night of the vigil. And I explained to the administration that those two lawsuits had nothing to do with the internal affairs, but that I would talk to the ethics officer and another lawyer in my office who does 1983 cases. And if they thought there was a conflict, then I would consider resigning. I advised the administration that both the ethics officer and my partner did not think I had a conflict. But to even more fully assure them, I said, I'll leave this up to the board. And I talked to the Citizens Law Enforcement Review Board, told them what was going on, and told them if they thought there was a problem that I would resign. At which point they asked me if I would be vice chairman and gave me a standing ovation. And so I stayed on until my term expired August 31 of 2017, when I was not reappointed. Subsequently, I found out is that the chairman of the board, Reverend Ralph White, sent a letter to Mayor Strickland advising and basically asking the mayor that the entire board would like me to be reappointed. And not unsurprising, the administration has not responded to that letter. In fact, Reverend White has again asked them, and there's just a deafening silence. You know, another thing is that it's come out. You know, there's a constitutional right to film police officers, and recently I've seen stickers that you know, reiterate this issue. And we've had issues right here where, you know, the police do not want to abide by that constitutional provision. Now, you have the right to film police officers as long as you don't impede, you know, their activities, and as long as you're not blocking traffic or egress or exit, you know. So that's a big way. The other issue that comes out, that's, you know, this is all interrelated. You know, we live in an interrelated world. We live in a global world, but everything's interrelated these days. A lot of the police officers that, you know, I've spoken with welcome having body cameras. It protects them. It's a tough job to be a police officer. And you know, a lot of times it's their word against somebody else's word. And if you have a contemporaneously record, whether it's audio and video, you know, you can see whether or not, you know, the citizenry was aggressive and belligerent and intoxicated, or, you know, whatever. And that the police officer did whatever he or she could under the circumstances without violating anybody's constitutional rights. It all, as I said before, it's interrelated. If you have an effective review board, a board that can summon witnesses, that can take testimony, that has their own investigator, that can compel testimony. Now, police officers, when they go before an internal review board, file, you know, a Garrett report that anything they say can't be used against them in another prosecution. Well, that protects them as well. And if they want to take the Fifth Amendment, and they have the right to have counsel at these review boards, and there are ways to protect people's privacy rights and whatnot. The Department of Justice almost invariably wants a civilian review board. They found that they're very effective. In all the consent orders, they require it. But it's interesting that members of the CLERB here have met with the representative of the DOJ incident to their review, and it was a separate review. Now, you know, I was part of that panel that met with them, and we first voiced our concerns of what we found, but we haven't had any. I don't know if there's been any feedback because I'm no longer on the board.
But that was another example of, you know, answering who will watch the watchers. I mean, the DOJ and the federal level.
Well, it was interesting, and I forget who wrote the article on it. The only time that officials from the President administration, the city administration, and the city council came to a CLERB meeting is when the DOJ sat in on it. Subsequently, I found out is that the chairman of the board, Reverend Ralph White, sent a letter to Mayor Strickland advising and basically asking the mayor that the entire board would like me to be reappointed. And not unsurprising, the administration has not responded to that letter. In fact, Reverend White has again asked them, and there's just a deafening silence. So one of the problems with the board, as you know, is that the board, the ordinance that created the board, at first provided for subpoena power. And that was removed, and the amended ordinance does not provide for excuse me, subpoena power, or the right of the board to issue subpoenas to require witnesses, including police officers, to appear. The board liaison has to ask the entire city council to issue the subpoena, and our board liaison has never appeared at the board meeting, so that's just a hollow provision. The second thing is that we do have our own budget, but it's not sufficient. And various other boards around the country have budgets that far exceed what ours is. And to be effective, a citizens review board needs to have an independent source of revenue. Their budget cannot be set by the elected officials, whether it's a mayor or a city council. And there should be a way to have the board totally independent from the city, whether they're appointed or elected by the electorate, or they're appointed by an independent commission or somehow. But if they're beholden, then there's always a problem.
The administration hasn't supported the board one iota. The liaison, that council member Worth Morgan, who's supposed to attend those meetings, hasn't attended a single one. And then, the director, who of course serves at the behest of our mayor, who claims he's never in charge when it's the police doing anything. This police director has completely thumbed his nose at any recommendations that CLERB has made. So we as people who live in this city need to be giving our mayor a directive to take police accountability seriously. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. The mayor can make all of this stuff happen with the stroke of a pen.
Yeah.
But he's got to want to, and we have to make him want to.